156 million people in Brazil are called to participate in this Sunday's polls to choose the next president of the country between the former president Lula da Silva and the current president Jair Bolsonaro. Thousands of activists gathered across the United Kingdom to protest against soaring energy prices and the climate crisis. In Burkina Faso, groups of demonstrators attacked the French embassy in the country after a new coup d'etat in that African nation. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Now we begin with the news. Around 156 million people in Brazil are called to participate in this Sunday's polls to choose the next president of the country between the former president Lula da Silva and the current president Jair Bolsonaro. In addition to the head of the state, voters will have to elect the future vice president, 27 governors, 513 deputies, 27 senators and regional deputies. According to the Brazilian Superior Electoral Court, the TSE, the polling station started at 8 a.m. local time and will close at 5 p.m. The Brazilian Constitution establishes that vote is mandatory for every literate citizen born in the country or naturalized between 18 and 70 years of age, while people with electoral residence abroad will only be able to vote in presidential elections. Alexandre de Moraes, president of Brazil's Supreme Electoral Court of Brazil, stressed the need for peace and calm during the voting day to hold clean, safe and transparent elections. If none of the candidates manages to surpass 50% of the votes, a second round will take place on October 30th between the top two candidates. Former Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, the big favorite in the polls, cast his vote on Sunday's presidential elections. Accompanied by his wife, sociologist Rosângela Silva, and Deputy Gleisi Hoffmann, Lula voted in São Bernardo do Campo, the city in the metropolitan region of São Paulo, where he started his political career. Right after, Lula da Silva stated that the country needs to recover the right to be happy, assuring that these are the most important elections for him, who governed for 2 terms between 2003 and 2010. Lula also said, "We want a country that lives in peace, with hope and believes in the future." Meanwhile, current Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro also casted his vote at a polling station in Rio de Janeiro. The Brazilian head of state faces a polarizing presidential election in which he is up against former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. Polls opened at 8 a.m. local time for 8 hours of balloting, with an early stream of voters who dutifully took to the streets in the red colors of Lula da Silva's Workers' Party. According to the polling agencies Datafolha and IPEC, Lula da Silva is likely to win the elections in a single round. Both agencies showed him at 50% and 51% respectively, with a 2-point margin of error. Now we go live to Brazil as presidential elections are underway in that South American nation. International analyst Danny Shaw provides us with more details, as he is Franco de Rocha, one of the largest voting centers in Sao Paulo. Be welcome, Danny.
Good afternoon, Gladys. Good afternoon, TeleSUR.
So, Danny, as you are in there, you can show us or maybe describe for us how is this, the ambience there, how the people is going to vote, and how are these elections going on and roll out? Because we know these elections are marked by polarization and tensions, and expectations have been building up.
Polarization and expectations are an understatement in this massive country of 210 million. the sixth largest economy in the world, an economy of some $2 trillion. There is so much at stake today in this showdown between fascism and neocolonialism, and another path, a step in the right direction towards self-determination. That's what the PT and Lula represent. I'm outside of one of the largest polling stations here in the north of Sao Paulo, in front of Osha. And what from the people is that this is actually a festival of democracy. They've waited 4 long, agonizing years to remove Bolsonaro and fascism from power, and today is their day. So of the 153 million Brazilians who are eligible to vote, I think a high percentage will take advantage of that democratic right today. Though Bolsonaro has questioned the legitimacy of these elections, we can see this as a Trumpian-like tactic, so he can try to wage some type of coup, similar to the coup that was waged in 2016 to remove Dilma Rousseff and the PT from power, but based on an honest, sober analysis of the balance of forces.
Yeah, so you were talking about how Bolsonaro has been downplaying and downgrading the legitimacy of these elections. And he has been saying that he's not going to recognize or acknowledge the victory of other candidate. And as we know, he has the power on the army and all the armed branches and the executive power. But this morning, just minutes ago, the president of the National Electoral Court, Alexandre de Moraes, I don't have your Portuguese, but I'm trying, you know. He was saying that these are clean, transparent, and fair elections. So I know these two parts of Brazilian power, the legislative and also, in this case, the electoral also, and the executive are in a confrontation. How can this, maybe this paradox is reflected in the elections and in the people that is going to vote?
Well, we remember that Trump employed a very similar tactic where he refused to recognize the results when he lost in 2020. And it's very clear that Bolsonaro is a student of Trump-like tactics. A group of international journalists, we met with the Superior Electoral Tribunal this week. They walked us through the process. This is a very sophisticated and modern process. The votes are automatically tallied electronically. Unlike the United States, where we had to wait 5 full days to know the results, by 11 p.m. Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro time, all of Brazil, this behemoth, this economic behemoth of South America, should know the results tonight. The popular sectors of the country are hoping that Lula wins in the first round because they're saying that their hearts and their anxiety cannot take another 28 days in case there's a second round showdown on October 30th.
So I have a last question for you. Do you believe that we are going to see a second round of these presidential elections, or are we going to see the final results today in this first round?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, Gladys. If I was a betting man, which I'm not, I believe in sober political prognostications, but Lula could win tonight, or it could take a second round because there's 2 other candidates, including Celso Gomez, and these other 2 candidates could absorb 5 to 8% of the vote, which could divide the PT Lula vote. But what we do know is that the vast majority of Brazilians are voting against fascism, against white supremacy, against Bolsonarismo. They don't want to be a neo-colony of the United States in the West. They want further Latin American integration. And Lula's campaign has campaigned around the SUR, South American Caribbean currency. He doesn't want, the Brazilian people don't want to continue to be a neo-colony. They want to rejoin a project, a Bolivarian project, and a project of Latin American unity and integration.
Okay, so thank you, Danny, for these opinions, this presence, and this moment of you hearing from the South. We hope you will be here with us as we cover these presidential elections in Brazil.
Thanks a lot. Thank you for the invite.
And now we have a short break, but stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. In Peru, this Sunday began the 2022 regional and municipal elections, which more than 24 million Peruvians from all over the country are called to participate. The polling stations opened their doors at 7 o'clock a.m. local time. Since early hours in cities such as Lima and Callao, citizens have been going to the polls to cast their vote. However, in some places of the capital, the polling stations had not been installed yet. This day has 102 international observers accredited by the National Jury of Elections. 30 of them correspond to the Organization of American States and 17 to the Inter-American Union of Electoral Organizations. And now let's see some reactions on the social network Twitter in the framework of the regional and municipal elections 2022 to be held in the nation this Sunday. Through the social network Twitter, the President Pedro Castillo detailed, "Today is a democratic party that must have the participation of all Peruvians, because new authorities will be elected who will assume the responsibility of working for the development of each district, province, and region of the country." Similarly, in the same social network, Communication and Dissemination Center of the Inter-American Union of Electoral Organizations said that in the morning hours of this Sunday, October the 2nd, our electoral observation mission in Peru traveled to witness the installation of the polling stations and the beginning of the voting process. For its part, on Saturday, Chad delegates agreed on a 2-year extension of the transitional period, setting the date for democratic elections for late 2024. The decision was taken during a National Reconciliation Dialogue Forum between delegates and junta leader Mohamed Idris Deby Itno. Hundreds of delegates think that Deby will not only continue as transitional president, but be eligible to run for presidency when elections are held. However, political experts consider this agreement will face resistance from political parties, civil society, regional bodies, as well as U.S. and the European Union. The partnership between China and African countries has seen the continent's infrastructure developing at a rapid rate, bringing immense benefits to the continent's people. Within the framework of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, the Asian giant has built thousands of kilometers of roads and railways, as well as port stations across large parts of the continent. According to former Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta, these investments has put African countries on a global trajectory of growth. The construction of the African Union Conference Center in the Ethiopian capital Addis Ababa is another landmark project undertaken by China in Africa. China's commitment to invest more in Africa's green energy infrastructure has become a key feature of future strategic cooperation. On Saturday, at least 174 people died in a clash between police and people in Indonesia after a football play celebrated at the Kanjuruhan Stadium. The incident also left 180 injured in one of the deadliest disasters in football history. After seeing their team going down 2-3 against Persibaya Surabaya, about 300 or 3,000 Arema fans stormed the pitch and faced the police, who fired tear gas to stop the stampede. Authorities said that they tried to persuade fans to return to the stands, but it was in vain. A hospital director stated that one of the victims was 5 years old, and many of the deceased were trapped and died suffocated, crushed, or on the way to the hospital. On Sunday, New Zealand's Museum Te Papa Tongarewa received the remains of dozens of indigenous Maori returned from Austria. The welcoming ceremony concluded when the remains of some 64 Maori indigenous people of the main islands of New Zealand and Chatham were taken to the Rongo Marairoa Marae, a sacred site for Polynesian societies. Both countries materializes a process of repatriation of remains of indigenous Maori from Austria, where they were for more than 130 years. Records show that most of the bones were collected by Austrian taxidermist and undertaker Andreas Reischek, who toured New Zealand for 12 years until 1889. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and also TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.